Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Almasri. Thanks for tuning in. It's your host, George Almasri, and today I interviewed Nick Carrazza, who is the owner or the co-owner of Rockstar Real Estate, which is a brokerage I used to work with. For those that don't know, they specialize on working with investors, and the reason that I want to talk to Nick is because him and his brother are extremely knowledgeable. They've been investing for a long time. They've seen a lot of changes. So on this episode, I talked to Nick about his beginnings in real estate investing. He talked about buying a property in Mississauga for about $150,000 at the time, digging up the foundation himself. And then we talked about the power of real estate over time, what it's done for him, how he started investing a couple years ago, and then what happened with those properties. He told me about not selling anything that he owns and the reason behind it, and then also talked about how his life has changed from owning these properties for, like I said, a long period of time. We touched on Croatia, traveling over there, bringing the kids, and creating this life that he wants, going there on vacation every single year. There was a lot of good stuff in here. Touched on family, fitness, wealth, all these things. So if you guys are interested in the episode, I would encourage you or ask you to leave us a review. Let me know what your thoughts are. And then also on the Apple Podcast platform. And then also make sure to subscribe on YouTube and share this with a friend or family member. I want to get the message out there. Thanks for all your support. Truly appreciate it. And if you want to connect with me about some multi-unit investment opportunities that I have in the Niagara region, just go to the website, welloff.ca, contact me from there, and I'm happy to discuss. Enjoy the episode. All right, I'm here with Nick Carrazza. Last year, I came here and I interviewed your brother.
Oh, this will be better for sure. No
yeah,
problem.
so the way I start off is by asking you a little bit about your childhood, so where you grew up, and a couple things you remember. I heard Tom's take on things, so I'm curious to hear yours.
All right. So I'm going to tell you how Tom picked on me while I was a kid?
Yeah, pretty much.
So you want to know where I grew up? East side of Mississauga. Middle-class family. We had a good childhood. We had both parents were around. Both parents. Our dad was Eastern European, was around less because he was kind of hanging out with his friends was more the priority. You know, playing cards and bocce. That was like in that culture. That's kind of how things worked.
Did you say bocce? You play?
Yeah.
Like the lawn bowling?
Yeah.
Oh, like Italians.
Like Italians. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, so our father's Croatian, mother's Scottish, but the Croatian, especially on the coast where he's from, the Croatian coastal culture and the Italian culture, same with diets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities, a ton of similarities there. So, but yeah, we were lucky, man. Both are, I was learned some things the hard way as a kid and some things the easy way. But yeah, overall it was good. Even my brother didn't, like I saw some other siblings didn't pick on me the same way and stuff like that. I learned some things that he did to me to torment me a little bit afterwards. I didn't realize he was tormenting me at the time, but yeah, it was good. So born and raised in Toronto area.
Did you guys fight a lot?
We didn't really fight that much.
Okay.
No, we're 5 years apart, so maybe that's why. So we didn't kind of like our two groups of friends were separate, completely separate.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's why. Like I think sometimes when siblings were a little bit closer and they're kind of friends, kind of overlapped, it led to some larger issues. Yeah. Whereas for us, it wasn't so much.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I know. Okay. So you guys grew up in Mississauga. I know kind of the backstory. Your dad. One of the big things you guys always share is how your dad was flipping a higher end home at one point, and he got caught when I think interest rates went up, and then you guys couldn't really sell that house. It was a flip, and that experience kind of brought you on the course towards thinking about like not putting your family in that situation moving forward. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? Like, how did you guys? What got you really interested in investing in real estate?
So the way I got started was I finished school. I finished high school. I guess I was in college, and I was always something that always appealed to me is I always tried to figure out the system. So even in high school, I wasn't really a complete kind of crap disturber. But see, I say crap because I'm trying to keep it very nice on your podcast.
Mine is pretty clean.
Yeah. So, so I wasn't trying to, I wasn't that, but I always tried to figure out different angles and tried to figure out how to kind of work the system a little bit in school. And so I was always that type of person. And then as I went through college and, started working in IT, I was working in IT. again, I was trying to figure out the system, and the way the system was structured at that time, I'm like, I don't see how this lines up with where I want to be and what I want to be doing. So I started looking for more options, and that's when I started reading different financial books and trying to get an understanding of that type of stuff. And then it was one of the traveling roadshow kind of conferences for real estate education. It was a U.S. company at the time. At that time, there was almost no Canadians really doing kind of organized real estate education, and they were coming. It was Robert Allen with Mark Victor Hansen. They came around, and they had recently released a book that was called The 1 Minute Millionaire. And they, so they're like, oh, if you want to discuss the 1 Minute Millionaire or whatever, come to this thing. And it ended up being the kind of the promotion, the introductory night, and the kind of the sales presentation for their real estate training program.
Yeah.
And I subscribed to it. And at that time, it was about $5,000 for the weekend. It was like 2.5 days in a hotel banquet hall. The model's changed a lot now. Now I think people charge 20, 30 grand for that type of thing. But they charge less of the time, and they tried to upsell you on the courses. I think now they charge you like a couple $100 for people and then try to upsell them. But so that's how I got started. I mean, that was it, and then I was just one of the few people that kind of took the information and did something with it. So the first property I bought was in Port Credit area, Cawthra and Lakeshore, for anyone familiar with the Mississauga area. Yeah. It was on a dead-end street right behind Cawthra Park Secondary School. It was a 2-bedroom bungalow. I bought it for $158. I flipped it 4 months later, sold it for $209.
Nice.
Right? Which today's prices, just think about that. So like I'm the old guy, right? Like it's 20 years now or whatever. Yeah. So I did that when I was 21. I'm definitely the old guy flipping properties at that price. Now you can barely get a parking spot for $158 downtown.
Crazy. Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, I only made $4,000. Yeah. And I did a hell of a lot of work for $4,000.
Was that the one where you dug up the foundation to waterproof it or something?
There's been multiple that I've dug up the foundation, but that was the first one. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That was the first one.
Yeah.
But ton of lessons, man. Like I look back and wouldn't have got me to the next step if I didn't start with that property.
Yeah.
But it was literally the crappiest property I could find is the one I went and bought because I had no money at that. Like, look, I was a 21-year-old. I took all the money I had in the world at that point, and I went and bought the crappiest property I could find.
Do you remember how much you had to invest at that time for that property?
Yeah, I still have all the numbers. I'm pretty sure it was about, I made $4,000 worth of profit, and then it's after commissions and expenses and everything.
Yeah.
So I want to say it was in the 30s. I think it was like a mid to higher 30 range, something like that.
That's pretty good though, just thinking about it, because I don't know too many 21-year-olds even today that would have 30 grand. Like I feel like a lot of people don't save money really that well. Kids, I'm saying.
Yeah. So I didn't either. So no, I saved money. So I had the money to buy it and I had some funds, but the rest of it was on a very small unsecured line of credit I had with ING at the time, and some other little bit of a loan or credit cards or something like that. So I'd say probably I had half that amount I had the amount to purchase it with whatever minimal down payment I put. I guess I put 5% down, like the least amount I could put down. I would have put down, and then I probably had extras for about half the renovation costs, and then I used some debt and stuff like that.
Do you ever look back and see what it's worth now? That same house?
I did. So I looked back. So the last time it sold was in 2015, and it sold for I'm drawing a blank. I think it was about 600 grand at the time.
Oh, that's nothing.
But I know it was about, but yeah, that's 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's worth probably about $1 million. I
for
I'd
sure
imagine.
over.
Well, everything's $1 million right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably like 1.5. I'm guessing somewhere in that range.
I don't know. It was a 2-bedroom bungalow. It was fairly small, right? Like it's a 2-bedroom bungalow still. So yeah, it could be. I think a conservative is like $1 million. I think especially to right now. But yeah, maybe as high. Maybe 1.5. It doesn't matter. Regardless, because I'm thinking to myself, I should have kept it.
Yeah.
But the big lesson I learned very quickly then, and it didn't take me very long to look back on that and learn, is that why the hell did I sell that property?
Yeah.
Like like it just made no sense to me that I sold it. But that's what I had seen in real estate, and that's in that initial course, which got me started. I'm not knocking the course. But it was always these strategies about, it's like they really focus on the quick money strategies because they try to make it like there's this quick, easy money in real estate, and that's how you're going to make it. And man, I've learned now, just anyone that I've seen have sustainable success in real estate, it's not about that at all.
Yeah, for sure.
So
you told me like before we started recording that you basically don't sell your properties, but is there like no exception to that rule? You just keep it regardless? Like even if you bought this, let's say 15 years ago, it was a small 2-bedroom bungalow and it no longer cash flows, you still hold on to it?
Well, if I bought it 15 years ago, it's cash flowing.
Well, if you never refinanced it or never leveraged it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's exceptions to every rule. So if a good opportunity comes up and I need to trade in something for another opportunity, then I'll sell it. But to sell it just to cash out some cash, and you know, maybe I'm in a fortunate position that I don't need these lump sums of cash. Yeah. It presents the question is, where would I put that money? Right, and that's what I ask other people. I'm like, okay, great, sell the property, I cash out whatever. Let's call it $250,000.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah, because you don't want to hold cash.
Well, no, I don't want to hold cash. Yeah. I don't want to hold cash, especially in the last couple of years have been proof. Like, you know, if you're holding cash, it's just withering away.
Yeah, yeah.
So then now what do I do with it? And I know there's options. I know there's stocks and things like that. Like, you know, there are those options, but I mean, the real estate's been performing so well for me, and it gives me an income stream. I get to refinance the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't go to, you know, I still have mutual funds in like I don't even know what it's called, RIF or something, a locked in like when I used to work at the Region Appeal, so I had a government job. So I have, I don't know what the number is, like $20,000 in these mutual funds. It's amazing. In 20 years, the $20,000 is not gone, it hasn't gone up, hasn't gone down. It just stays at $20,000.
Wow.
I don't know what happens, but like, you know, so I see what happens there. I can never refinance those things. Like, it doesn't get paid off. Whereas these things, I can keep tapping into it. So I just don't understand the logic. So I'm not tied to real estate. I could care less. You could tell me water bottles. If I could do the same thing with water bottles, I'd be doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Yeah. I guess, so what I'm saying is, like, let's say this 2-bedroom bungalow, there's a cap on the rent. If you refinance it to the current value, it might not cash flow. It might be cash flow negative. So would you avoid that situation? Where do you just like refinance to an amount where it's at least break even?
Yeah. It's so yes. The reason I hesitate is because there's two answers, right? There's the answer that I might give to my kids if they were asking me, and there's the answer that I've been doing myself. So I'm not refinancing a lot of my properties. There's a bunch of equity sitting in those properties. And again, maybe I'm in a fortunate position because I don't have that need to be able to do it. And I also have this belief that you don't have to then refinance every property to continue to buy more and more and more properties if you don't want to.
Right.
Like there's in a lot of real estate communities, there's this thing about more is better. You know, it's like, well, how many doors do you have? It's like, oh, this person has 52 doors.
Yeah.
And that person only has 5 doors. So that person, but if those 5 doors are paid off, and those 52 doors are leveraged up to the, you know, the gills, then, I mean, it's the same type of portfolio.
Sure.
Like, in fact, I'd argue that I might want the 5 doors more because the stress involved, you know what I mean? I have a bunch of equity. I have free and clear cash flow. I don't have to worry about a bunch of JV partners, a bunch of tenants, you know, like, so that's why I hesitate answering it. So 100% I would refinance properties.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in a position where your income is high enough to allow you to continue to buy using the income you're producing, then you don't need to refinance. But I guess some people, they don't have that ability. They're not making enough at work, or they have too many bills to pay, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I have refinanced properties, and I will continue to refinance properties, but early on, especially right away, like we were buying properties, we were doing a bunch of work to them, we were getting them appraised, and then refinancing, taking our equity out, and then putting it into another property. So 100% I would do it. I don't think I would do it I've never done it to put myself in a negative cash flow situation. I don't think I would do it unless I was fairly certain that it would be short term, to answer your question more directly. But that is just not my favorite position to be in.
Okay, so you were saying that if you were to give your kids advice, the answer might be different. So what would you tell them? Would you suggest refinancing so they can grow their portfolio, or what would you say?
Yeah, I think there's stages as an investor.
Yeah, I
think so. Like when I started investing, it was find me I'll find the property. How do I buy this property with? Can I give you a nickel as a down payment? And can the bank fund the renovations? Like I have very little. So like I just want properties. How do I get those?
Yeah.
As you kind of then mature as an investor, you might not want to get into those types of leverage situations the same way. Right. So I think it's that. I think kind of there's life cycles. Yeah. So, and I would, or there's stages more than life cycles. And I think I would try to explain that to them. One thing that I think that personally, I didn't learn this until we have a property in Croatia. That was the first property that we bought cash, right? Because there's no finance really available there. As a Canadian buying a property in Croatia, it doesn't really exist, right? Yeah. So we bought this property cash. And it was really weird the first time we were there. And I was like, this is strange. Like we have this property. They have a fairly high land transfer tax there, or the equivalent of land transfer tax, but no real ongoing property tax. So your only payments are some, you know, in the winter, some heating payments for electricity and stuff, like, you know, electricity and water. So it's almost nothing. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, this is the first property I've owned. Like, and well, Tom and I both, but it's like, there was no payment. Like, this is ownership. And that's when I started looking more seriously into this ownership of assets. And I think it's something that in our society that we use so much debt for everything, I think it's something that's lost. And I think a lot of times that, you know, debt can be used wisely, and that's great. But I think then there comes a point where you want to own things. You don't want the bank knocking on your door, the government or whatever. There's this ownership. And it changed my opinion on stuff. And that's probably one of the reasons that I'm comfortable not always refinancing things and using debt all the time, because I'm like, there's something to be said for just like, this is my asset, leave me alone. Right. And if, you know, if you talk to some people like families that have generated, you know, a fair amount of wealth over generations, that's really how a lot of it came to be. It's from ownership, you know, not from always using debt. The debt has to go away sooner or later. So it's just at what point do you want to do it?
Sure. Well, that brings me to, that makes me think of another question that I had for you. So how long when you start investing, how long does it take before you start really seeing it change your life or impacting your life financially? You know, because at first, you know, you're not really making that much cash flow if you just have one or two properties. Your equity's building, but it doesn't really impact your life that much. How many years does it take in your experience before it really starts taking impact?
Longer than you want it to, that's for sure. It's weird because you buy a property, you have a few $100 a month in cash flow, and it's just like, oh, that sucks. Okay, that's not going to do anything. Yeah, I don't have a solid answer for that. I think it depends. For me personally, it just depends on the type of property. So, you know, one of the early properties I had, it was with a friend. We bought it. It was a student property by McMaster. Still own it today, actually. And we renovated it. We refinanced it. Took all our money out. This was within the year. Took all our money out. Thin cash flow, still very strongly. It was a student rental at the time, over $1,000, and then we were able to use that money and go buy another property. And I think that's when I saw, now I did a lot more, there was a lot more sweat equity at the time. I was younger, had more time. So him and I were doing a lot of the work ourselves. But that's when I started seeing like, wow, this gets interesting all of a sudden. Like I can, you know, so it was, and it's weird because it's a kind of it goes against what I just said about owning assets. Whereas I was refinancing, using that debt to get my money back, and then trying to buy another property with as little down payment as possible, right? So that's what I meant earlier about the different life cycles. So I don't know. It really depends on what you do. Like, but I would say what 3 to 5 years you start. Like, I would say just a few years, and you can look back and be like, oh wow, this is getting interesting. Because the equity starts being built up just from the mortgage pay down. I'm not even talking about the potential of appreciation or whatever. And all of a sudden you have this equity. There's this little bit of cash flow. Things have settled down, because whenever you get a new property, there's always a few things that come up. It's like when you move, if you buy a new one for your own family or yourself. There's always a few things that the owners didn't tell you. They're like, oh, they didn't tell me about this little thing broken, right? So there's always those things you got to deal with. And then all of a sudden it settles down. You're just like, oh yeah, this is starting to look good. So it's years. It's definitely years, but it's not too long.
I guess maybe more specifically, I would like to know, just from your experience, when does it start to impact your personal life, where you can use some of that money and, you know, buy a car for yourself, or not that you would necessarily do that, but you can go on vacation more often. Is that, do you rely on your assets for that, or is just that happens from your business growing?
Well, it's both. Like with it depends on who you are and how you structure things, right? So I can tell you, with the investors that we've worked with, we've seen people that have, after that, now they came in with a chunk of money, but after a year they've left their job and they were just living off the properties, you know. And then I've seen some people build up a portfolio after 10 years of 15 properties, and then they liquidate one or two, they pay off a bunch of debt, and they quit their jobs, and then they live off the rest. So different people have kind of a different approach. I've seen it right across the board. Right. For me, I don't know, I don't really know. I don't remember when it did that, because I was still working, so I was focused on just getting more. I wasn't focused on it changing my life. I was just focused on getting more, and then we started our business. So it didn't really, there wasn't that moment for me where I can look back and reflect, and for me it was that. But I've seen other people, it just ranges on what they've done.
When it comes to family, how have you been able to kind of balance out your business and your family? Because you guys started Rockstar, like 12, 13 years ago, something like that?
I think it's 14 now.
14 years,
Yeah. Less hair. I just go by the hairline. As it recedes, it's longer. So I see you looking at my hair. No, what are you thinking there? So see.
Yeah. So okay. So balancing it out, how have you been able to do that? Do you have any like maybe regrets about maybe working too much, spending too much time on the business, or do you feel like it's been pretty balanced?
I feel like it's been pretty balanced. Could I have done better? Yeah, for sure. Like my kids are still young, but I make a lot of their stuff a priority. You know, like my daughters are in different sports and extracurricular activities, and I'm there regularly. It's not like I'm there once a month. Like one of my daughters is in horseback riding. I'm at the farm multiple times a week with her, you know, and I see what she's doing and stuff. And it's very cool. My other daughter is now in cheer and voice. So because COVID, we haven't been able to watch the voice lessons, but you know, so I'm involved that way. And I don't miss, I've gone to the school as a parent at like different field trips and stuff like that. Like I've done that whole thing. So I try to, so we do our best to maintain that, but I mean, there's sometimes when we're pulled a little bit more towards work than we want to be, and but I think it's been pretty good. I think it's been pretty good. It all comes down to what you prioritize. If your family's really a priority to you, then you got to treat it like a priority, right? And that's you know, like there's certain things, like if I have things with my kids, like I put it in my calendar. It's not just like, oh, well, I hope I get home in time to be able to see that. Like it's a priority. No different than when we booked this, it's in my calendar. And I think a lot of people don't do that with the family. The family gets, well, whatever's left over after I deal with this other stuff. So just like our vacations and things like that, like, you know, we've been fortunate for the last, what's it now? This will be 12 years straight. We've gone to Europe for a month every single year. Nice. That's a family vacation. Yeah. So they're able to do some of that stuff too. So that alone is been really nice. And like my kids love it. I'm trying to ruin it for, like, I have 2 daughters, right? So I'm trying to ruin it for any other guy that comes along, because they have to be like, hey, you know, I used to go to Europe for a month every year. Like, are you going to be able to, are you up for that or what? Right. So I'm trying to planting these landmines ahead of time, but yeah, so I think it's been, I think I've done an okay job. Could I do better? 100%. But it's something that I'm conscious of on a regular basis. And I find myself, I have to tell myself sometimes when I feel rushed and my daughter's trying to show me like the new fidgets that she's dealing with. You know, the fidgets are all those things from China that pop back and forth that don't really do anything. And you're like, why are you playing this like this as a toy? And why did I spend money to buy this for you? It's one of those things. She will, you know, when she's like, look at this and that. And I want to be like, oh my God, I just want to go and deal with this. I do find consciously I have to remind myself like, hey, like you're not going to get this chance again to be right here with her right now. So I try to do that, you know? So I definitely, it's not like it's easy. There's a conscious effort made to kind of push back towards that.
Do your so you said your kids enjoy going to Croatia. Do they have like family there, or is it just you guys, just you and Tom and the kids? Or
it's so we do have some family there.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they enjoy the family aspect of it, because they're at that age. They're just like, I don't speak the language that much anymore. And, you know, we've gone to like my dad's old village and seen that. And my youngest daughter's like, it smells here. Why are we here? And I'm like, that's where food comes from. Damn it. Enjoy it. Right. So there is some family there. We go for a portion ourselves. We try to overlap with Tom's family as well. So we're all there together, because it's kind of cool with the cousins and with everyone there. So that's kind of cool as well. And then on the way back, what we do is we usually pick a different country every year that we'll go visit. So we'll stop over there as well. So they like that. So last year wasn't on the way back, but like the last few years have been, I think it was England in one year, Italy another year, went to Venice. So it was London, Venice, and then we were in Greece, went to Athens and some of the islands last year. So, you know, they like travel. I mean, we forced them through traveling. They've both traveled every year since birth. They've been over there. So it's like, that's what they know. So it's just it's a combination of the experiences and learning, and then the family as well. But they really like, I mean, they tell us they like it. I don't know, but right now they're telling us they like it. The point will come when their friends are going to become more important to them than us. And they're going to be like, I don't really want to go. I want to stay here with my friends, you know? So we're kind of taking full advantage of it now. I figure my oldest is, she'll be 12 this year. So I figure we have a handful of more years before she starts kind of doing that. So we're trying to take full advantage, but yeah, I think it's more the experiences they like, and us too. Like, we definitely enjoy seeing other cultures and doing other things. And, we drag them along for the ride since a very, very young age.
Awesome. So I want to kind of shift things over a little bit, talk about your business, Rockstar Real Estate and whatnot. One thing that I've noticed about Rockstar is the community the feel of like investors helping each other. There's a Rockstar community. How did you guys create that?
I'd say by accident. Like there's no conscious effort put towards creating that. I think the goal for us, and I think where it might come from, is that Rockstar was really born out of just trying to help people and share information. And I think naturally the people that like that type of thing are people that then also share information with others. And so I think it's just been kind of like a happy accident that just the structure of the business, because of the way it's formed and because of all the classes and the trainings and the reports we give away and stuff, people that like information are also people that usually like to share information because that's what they like to talk about and stuff like that. So it's just kind of been that way. So we've been fortunate. We've definitely been fortunate that way. And then also as we've grown and there's just a larger community, naturally there's going to be a larger number of people that want to share stuff. You know, there's more people sharing stuff now than when there was 50 investors that we were working with. And it's just, you know, and sometimes those people are louder voices or give back more.
One thing that I noticed, or at least this is just my perspective, you probably have more information than I do about this, but it seems like the people that are part of the Rockstar community are not typically part of other community, like investment communities in Ontario. Like, you know, there's a couple of big ones that people know of, but you guys have like this exclusive group of people that just are loyal to the brand and just stay within the community. It's pretty cool to see. Would you agree with that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
We're so heads down in what we have to do. We don't really know. But at first glance, like, you know, at first thought, I would probably say no. Like I know a lot of even our members have started other groups. Like they have other groups in other areas. I know multiple ones that have done meetups and some of the other communities. Some people don't even know that some people that have these other groups were longtime Rockstar members and we've helped them form those other groups. So, but I do know a number of people that go to different meetups or, you know, events and that type of stuff. And so I don't know. I think investors, you know, the real investors are looking for information everywhere and they just go to where they can find it and what they feel is valuable to them. So maybe there's a percentage of people that come here and they find value here and they're happy with it. And there's a percentage of people that will go searching elsewhere as well. Yeah. Right. So the one thing we don't do at any of our events or anything is we don't have people up there pitching and selling other stuff. Yeah. Right. And that's something that I think some people, it's a little bit less, it's not as common. And I think sometimes people like that because they're just like, oh, you just go, you get some information, you leave. There's no, that's kind of like it, you know, so maybe that, but overall, I think people are searching for, you know, for things everywhere.
Yeah, for those that don't know, if they're listening, the Your Life, Your Terms event, I think that happens quarterly, or typically happens quarterly.
It was quarterly. It was too much work. Yeah. So now it's 3 times a year, and we're like, well, how do we get this down to 2 times a year? So, but it's 3 times a year right now. Yeah.
And you used to get anywhere between like 600 to 700 people in a room, usually before the whole COVID stuff happened. But
a little bit more than that. But yeah, overall, and then we'll be going back to. We've been doing them virtually, but we're going back to in person. The talking to your computer is you can only do that for so long before you go crazy, right?
Yeah.
So
those were really cool events just to have that many people in a room. Like you said, you're not pitching anything, you're just sharing information. Do we want to, because I know you just had an event, we're recording this in February, you guys just had your Life, Your Terms event. Do you have any statistics you want to share about new builds, housing, where the market's headed?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. That was, you know, 3 or 4 days of aggregating research for a 45-minute presentation. I have 110 slides I could share with you. I don't know. I don't think so. I think just the biggest thing is like headlines are BS. I almost swore again, so I stopped myself. But headlines are BS. You just got to look at what's happening behind those to get a true understanding. And I think so many people get caught up in the headlines, and everyone's busy, and they don't have time to look behind it. And it's tough, and I get it. But when you see a headline about, like, you know, maybe real estate's undersupplied and they're going to need all this housing. Okay, maybe that's true, right? And that, you know, you want to believe that as an investor, you want to believe that's true. You're like, oh, this is great for my properties and stuff. But why is it? Like, why is it like that? Go a little bit deeper and try to understand, get the information behind it, and see if you agree with that. and then do it. Because the way a lot of the headlines are formed is something gets released, or a press release, or a number. A reporter picks it up, and this is their job, especially in today's world with so much content. They just pick it up, they put a good headline together, they get that stat, they put 3 or 4 paragraphs at the top or the bottom, they call someone in the community somewhere to get 1 or 2 quotes, boom, article, pushed out.
Yeah.
Like, there's no real thought behind it. So I think our job as investors, for our own portfolios and for what we want to do with our investing, is our job is to then look into that information and find out if we agree with it or disagree with it. Because just because it comes from a certain source, it doesn't mean it's accurate. A great example is, I'll pick on the government, for example. I like picking on the government.
Yeah.
Right. CMHC. When COVID hit, what does CMHC say? Property prices were going to drop.
Yeah.
By what, 20? Wasn't it 28% or something?
Yeah,
it was a big number.
Crazy
and we were
numbers.
looking at these numbers. We're like, I don't get this. Like, I remember doing one of our podcasts, and I said, I think it's irresponsible that they even put that out there. Like, it's completely irresponsible they did that. And not only did they didn't drop, and I'm not saying this is because real estate's the best thing ever. The reason they didn't drop is because the government pumped all this money into the system. The same government, they'll run CMHC, right? I know it's independent, but it's not really independent, let's be honest, right? So it's like, how can they say this stuff? We know someone that sold their house because of that headline. They sold their house. They had to buy in 6 months later and spend more money.
Oh, crazy.
Plus all their expenses.
So you think that part of the reason that prices jumped so much since the beginning of COVID is because of all the money they pumped into the system?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Do you think that has a big...
Since the start of COVID, and I don't know if it's exactly the start of COVID, the Bank of Canada has bought, I had the stat, it's like over 80%. I think it's like 81.5%, and it's somewhere around there. So no one quote me on it. You can look it up, but it's of the bonds being issued. They've pumped all this money into the economy, and when they're buying the bonds, it's other people don't have to, so there's less leverage in the system, so the banks can go and lend more.
Yeah.
And then when the banks are lending more, right, it makes it easier for them when they were taking things off their balance books. It makes them to lend more, and asset prices go up. When you push money into the system in our inflationary environment, what's happened to the money? It's gone into financial assets, not just real estate, stocks, everything.
Yeah.
It's a gong show, everything.
Okay.
This is financial repression at its best. I'm telling you, like, this is negative interest rates. Asset prices are going up while the value of cash is doing nothing. So savers are being hurt. They're taking from savers, and that's how they're paying off their debt. And that's why they're letting inflation run hot. It's almost criminal.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. So you weren't referring to, like the CERB payments and all that money they were dishing out. You're talking more of them buying bonds and increasing.
No, and the CERB payments, because there's two. There's monetary policy and financial policy, right?
Yeah,
so fiscal policy, sorry. So there's two, and they went all in on both at that time, and that because we saw what did we see? Like, saving rates in Canada jumped. Saving rates were at like the highest through COVID, because they put all this money into the system. Why do you think people were buying boats and jet skis and everything else? You couldn't get any of this leisurely stuff because there was all this extra money in the system. Yeah. So it was both. They were propping up. Like, maybe they thought they were doing the right thing, maybe they didn't. But you even if they thought they were doing the right thing at first, they quickly realized after a few months that they were like, well, okay, this is going to have. They should have. I mean, it was very obvious it was going to have unintended consequences, which we're paying the price now. Yeah. So they've propped up the market. Like, it's very clear they've propped up the market, not just real estate, all sorts of assets, all sorts of assets.
And that's in combination with just shortage of housing in general.
100%. Yeah, we're strong believers in that.
Yeah.
We pulled numbers. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. We pulled these numbers. You saw the presentation when I was just sharing these numbers. I think it was 2018 when we pulled the numbers that we looked at. And we're like, at the current rate, when we took the 10-year trend of population growth, of household formations, versus the 10-year trend of housing completions in the GTA, it was clear to see we were 2.5 years behind, or we would be by 2021 if those numbers were going to be true, those forecasts. And it looked like, and that was accurate. Like, now in hindsight, it's very easy for us to say, okay, I think that was accurate. But even when it was happening, it was almost like you could look around. Like, just a few years ago, I gauge it. I've lived in Oakville now for, I guess, since I got married, and I should know how many years that is. And my wife's going to count 14, maybe 15. No, I think last year was 15. Yeah, I should know that. I think last year was 15. So 15 and a half years, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
I just remember I bought her a nice gift that she was happy about. And I think it was because it was 15. I felt like I had to do something nice. Yeah. So I think, and for 15 years, when I've had to drive to Hamilton to one of the investment properties, the amount of traffic that I saw 50, what in the different stages. So at one point I just looked around. I'm like, why do I have to leave now? Like before, if I left before 4:00, it was, I didn't really hit much traffic. There was a point in time before COVID that if I wasn't leaving by like 2:45, I'd be sitting in traffic. So I'm like, what's going on here? And that's what caused us to think and look into these numbers and get an understanding of that type of stuff. So yeah, I think the supply and demand's out of whack because like our immigration policies are bringing a lot of people in, which this is an anti-immigration thing. I'm all for immigration, especially our policies for immigration. We get some really good. I don't want them to change them actually. Like I think we have great immigration policies. I think the downside is the Liberal government is trying to change them, and I think that they're going to make them worse. But I'm all the immigration's fine. That's how we're growing as an economy. That's fine. So we bring in. The population growth through immigration plus the lack of supply that we've had in this area and some kind of the restrictions we have, it's made it challenging, and that's why we're seeing smaller units and smaller lots and higher prices. And it's not going to be straight up forever. Nothing goes straight up, especially when we have a spike like we've had. That's incredibly unhealthy. But I think long term, because I'm definitely like a long-term investor, long-term trend is still a lot of those foundational pieces are in place, and until those foundational pieces change, it's hard to see that trend change. Now, if those foundational pieces change, then the trend can change.
So in your opinion, how do you think that recent policies, financial, the way they've handled the whole financial situation with all the money they've given out and all the bonds and whatever else, how do you think that's going to impact the market over the next couple of years?
I think we've seen most of it. I think we've seen most of it. Like we're seeing the impact of it now. So what's happened to the prices and how they've jumped, that's the impact. So now it's like, well, what's next? Right. So they should be announcing some interest rates, which was hoping to they've tried to talk down the market a number of times, just not working. So they'll try to scare it now with some policy changes, and maybe those policy changes finally, make prices move a little bit. Hopefully prices come down a little bit. I know a lot of people don't want me to say that, but that's what creates a more long-term sustainable market. And then they continue on their kind of longer-term trajectory. I think what's ultimately going to happen is that the affordability is going to continue to be a problem, and the government's going to someone is going to think it's a good political move to try to make housing more affordable for people. And that's a great message. And to do that, they're going to then extend amortizations again, because I don't think they can bring the asset prices down with what they need. Because if they have deflation in our economy right now, especially through housing, there's going to be a lot bigger problems, because now they've blown this bubble so big, they can't actually let it falter. So I think that's the challenge. They're trying to kind of let the air out slowly. And I think to do that, they're going to have to address affordability, and that's going to change amortizations. They'll extend. So a lot of people don't even know that we used to have mortgages that were amortized over 40 years. In other countries, it's quite normal to have 50-year mortgages or longer, right? And I think we're going to start seeing that, because then the monthly payment drops. And I did the math on about on a $750,000 mortgage, and I think it goes up by about $130,000 or something if you extend the amortization over 5 years. And that was roughly a 3% interest rate or something. I forget the details, but when you do that math, you're like, yeah, this is a natural next step for them. And then they hope that the inflation takes hold and wage inflation picks up, and then it helps with affordability. But they can't let the government has so much debt that they can't let deflation take hold, or they're in a world of hurt. So they can't let that happen. That's why they need this inflation. That's why they haven't raised interest rates yet. They're like, oh yeah, I think we're going to have to. Like, what do you mean you think you're going to have to? They're like, well, inflation's 5%. Yeah, you're right. Unless you want to live someplace, or you want to put fuel in your car, or you want food, inflation's 5%. But any of those other three things, it sure as heck isn't 5%. Right? Sorry, this isn't meant to be a rant. It's just the way, that's the way we look at this stuff, because it's about going that one step deeper. And we're trying to figure this out like everyone else is. And then we just use that kind of information to base our decisions off that. That's how we invest. That's how we base our decisions off of that.
And just to clarify, like, you still believe that everybody should be buying real estate and holding on to it as an asset to fight against this inflation and all this other stuff that's going on.
Like yes. The short answer is yes. If I look at my bank account and there's a chunk of capital sitting there, I'm just like, why is it there? This cash right now is just, it's getting like, it's totally getting withered away. It seems crazy to me not to have it into. and even though the business is around real estate and we sell real estate and that's how we derive income is from that stuff, I'm not tied to real estate. Like I'm a really strange investor because there's a lot of investors who are like, I just love real estate. It's like the best thing ever. I love it. And I'm like, I don't, but if you could show me something that gives me the same opportunity that is a hedge against inflation. Look, it's like a business in a box that's hedged against inflation because the rents go up with inflation too. Right? Rents go up, the value of it go up, it builds up the equity, you can leverage it. Like there's so much value to it. If you show me how to do that, like I said before with anything else, water bottles or anything else, I would gladly do the same thing. Yeah. But I think it's important to have hard assets. 100%. I think it's important to own assets and assets that can provide an income stream to me are even more valuable. So the low hanging fruit, if that's kind of the thesis that you live by, then the low hanging fruit is the real estate's one of the obvious ones.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're kind of getting near the end here, but I just wanted to quickly touch on stress management and fitness. So obviously like you've stayed in shape for many, many years. What has fitness done for you, and what are some ways that you've been able to manage your stress given all like the business you run, the rentals you own, all that stuff?
So fitness is really important to me. So again, it goes back to priority management. It's like I'll give you an example. Last week I had to get up early for something. I had to be somewhere by 8 a.m. So my whole morning gets thrown off because usually I go to the gym first, then I come home, take the kids to school because they're young. I'd like to be able to do that and then go do what I need to do. So I had to be someplace by 8 a.m. So instead of not going to the gym, I just woke up earlier and I was at the gym by, I guess, about 20 after 5 to do whatever normal workouts I would do, then go home and shower. So it's just become a priority for me. I started working out. I started getting into fitness and health because I wasn't that healthy when I was a kid. I was getting sick a lot. And I went to Catholic school, didn't graduate high school initially because at that last year of high school, you have a half period spare, and then half is religion at the Catholic school. And I went to spare, and then I said, well, why am I going to start going to religion? Spare is way more fun than religion. So I just never showed up to class, right? And I was half a credit short of graduating. So I had to take in summer school to graduate. So they still let me walk across the stage, pretend I graduated and stuff. I was like, oh, that was stupid. It really messed that one up. But in summer school, I took the easiest credit I could find because I just needed half a credit. There was a grade 10 equivalent class. It was a weightlifting class. One of the teachers had a bunch of weightlifting equipment and stuff like that. And he brought it to the school and we had a weightlifting class there. That's, one of the gym teachers was really into that stuff. And that got me starting to work out. And I just became hooked ever since then. So I was probably 18 or 19. And I just got hooked because I found that my health was better. Like just my whole life got better. Like, and it, not just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint too. Like it was just everything. So that's why it's so important to me. It's and even when I go on vacation, we go to Croatia for a month, like we have a barbell and weights and I have rings and like I have equipment over there. It's, that I use and I work out regularly. And the people that live close to us, we're in Croatia and they see me running in 40-degree heat. They're like, this guy's going to die. We got to help him. So, but yeah, so that's been, I can't speak highly enough of the benefits in my life that I think would carry over to other people's lives with that type of stuff. Like it's been so valuable to me. But I get stressed and it's an ongoing challenge. It's just, I find I get stressed the most when there's too much going on initially and I'm not organized, so I'm not on top of it. So anytime I'm just like, this is a disaster, I need to pull back. I need to get on top of it, get organized, whether it's lists or putting things in the calendar, when things will be taken care of, and getting some processes in place, and then addressing it like that. That's been just the number one thing. And I know it's very simple, but it's just like I always stray away from that. Like I'm good at it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm very structured. Everything's going well, no problems. And then I slowly kind of let that go. And then I get into a little bit of a period of chaos again. And then I'm like, oh, geez, why did I get away from that? And I got to kind of right the ship and get myself back on track. And then it kind of goes well again. So anything you can do that you can systemize something. Tom and I are really big on processes and systems. So that's always been helpful for that type of stuff. And we're always trying to implement more of those things.
Cool. Yeah, I think that that's a good answer to the question. I find that the list thing is very helpful. Like you're saying, like just creating that list, getting organized, that's a huge part of it. And obviously fitness is a huge part of it too, because if you didn't work out, I'm sure your stress levels would be higher.
Oh yeah. 100%. It's weird. Like what I tell a lot of people that are type A personalities, a lot of investors are type A personalities, or they want more, or they're, in personality tests, they would be considered quote unquote achievers. It doesn't say, but if you're not an investor, you're not. But just a lot of people are that more driven type A person if they're investing. And a lot of us like the sense of accomplishment. So the list thing tends to be good. And sometimes I'll write everything on there. Mm-hmm. Like I got to write an email. Like there's 3 people I have to follow up with today. I would write those things down. Yeah. And then, cause you know why, and I don't know if you're like this, but when you get to cross that thing off the list,
you're that's the best.
Oh yeah, man. And all you did was write a damn email.
Yeah.
So, you gotta be realistic with what you can do. And sometimes give yourself those little wins. Yeah. And I found at one point, one thing, this may or may not help, and it might not apply to you, is early on, I found I was always trying to do too much in a day. Mm-hmm. So I was always letting myself down, and I was always coming in behind the next day. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I had to come to terms with. Like I just pick 1 or 2 main things that have to get done. Those are the priorities. And then I try to battle some other little stuff. I don't try to do too much anymore. And that's been, there are days I try to, and it's not a perfect thing, but it's definitely helped when I'm like, no, it's just all I need is if I can just get one thing done every day, mm-hmm. whatever the most important thing is done, that's 1 to 2 hours of focused work of whatever it is. If I get that done, the rest of the day's a win, no matter what happens. Yeah. Right. Well, I shouldn't say no matter what happens, provided nothing too outside the box happens. But the rest of the day is a win. It doesn't matter because you got that most important thing done.
Yeah, because tons of things come up that aren't really that important, and you can get caught up in doing all those little things.
Well, with that personality type, like you mentioned about with the list, it feels like you're accomplishing something, mm-hmm. but you're not accomplishing anything of importance. Yeah. And to get the goals and the results that, we all want, you got to do the important stuff. Mm-hmm. The other stuff will take care of itself half the time.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I know you've got a lot going on today. So just to finish things off, how do people reach you? What services do you and Rockstar Real Estate provide?
Just, for anything, if you're looking for any information, reports, we do a lot of between the podcast and the reports and articles and different things, but a lot of real estate investing information locally around here in Southern Ontario, and some stuff that goes beyond that is just go to rockstarinnercircle.com mm-hmm. and all that stuff's there. You can find that. There's a bunch of stuff that we're always putting out that way.
Cool. Nick, thanks a lot. I appreciate you doing this. I know you're a busy guy.
Nice seeing you again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for listening to this episode. Your support is truly appreciated. And if you can share this with a friend or family member that might benefit from the information, remember our goal is to motivate and inspire others to take action and to build wealth and to become well off. Enjoy the rest of your day.